Alright, you guys, it's your boy Jalen back at it again with another video. And in today's video, I want to discuss Evola's take on Nietzschean philosophy. Specifically, we're going to be going into the concept of the Superman. And in front of me, I have Julius Evola's The Fall of Spirituality. I'm going to be reading from the chapter Primitivism, the Possessed, the Superman, where he goes into Nietzsche. Towards the end, I'm only going to read like a page and a half to sort of get into the thought, because I think this page and a half really sums up what Evola's really getting at when it comes to one that pursues a Nietzschean path to life and the dangers that can come along with that. So yeah, I'm gonna try and make this fast because I don't want to wet up my book, because it's hot out here, and like whenever I sweat. So let's get right into it. So here we go. Starts at page 148, just in case anybody has the book and wants to find what I'm reading. The doctrine of the Superman, formulated essentially on a cerebral plane, has not been translated into a spiritualistic practice. Nonetheless, one must bear in mind that it indicates, as has been said, a fatal direction of development for the Western man who does not evade nor set off down the path of regressions. Thus, we must remain aware of it in all its dangers. The Superman constitutes a limit, something like walking on the razor's edge. At the highest vertex of an ascesis for ascesis' sake, it takes almost nothing at all to transform the Superman into one of the possessed, at which point a superior human type becomes a dangerous instrument of obscure forces. This danger is greatest at that point where man, made of pure but untransfigured will, comes out of a kind of paralysis and acts. And this action, practically and technically, is for him a kind of necessity. In the world of the Superman, certain discharges are necessary in the form of actions beyond good and evil, and experiences of an extreme intensity, both of which might give rise to as many evocations. To analyze this order of things will lead us rather far in part. We will return to it in the next chapters when we speak of the danger of certain forms of magic. Contacts with the supersensible and the spiritual might be established on the path of the Superman, even without wishing it and without realizing it, because one proceeds along the borderline that separates what is individual and human from what is no longer so. Unlike the cases that we will mention, and also unlike what occurs in certain special methods of development, here there is the exacerbating circumstance that the Superman knows nothing hypothetically of the supersensible, and therefore has no real defense in facing it. He is left to himself with no excuses, as Sartre would say, so he is truly living dangerously. Merezhkovsky, developing the aforementioned schema in a quasi-Hegelian sense, sees the solution of the problem in the synthesis and reciprocal integration of the symbols of the two epochs, that is, an encounter of the man-God with the God-man. It is certain that there is only a single way out, to open the path up to transcendence, to recognize that the supernatural order alone is the one in which the true ideal of the Superman can be realized. This is the only way to advance while continuing the ascent. Instead of falling over the precipice, breaking up, or collapsing, after having reached the farthest peak solely on the strength of the human personality, and then the Superman will not be the outermost limit and the furthest empowering of the human species, but will be of another nature, a different species, one that is no longer man. The point of separation is not Kirilov's suicide, but what the traditional teaching has conceived of as initiatory death. There is only one solution for the tragedy of the Titan, for overcoming possession, for the true realization of the precept that man is something that must be overcome, and this is the path of traditional initiations. Then, too, certain positions proper to Supermanism will lose their blasphemous tinge, be rectified, and they will bring one back to the universal teachings of a higher wisdom. So, in that selection, and I just put sweat all over my copy of that book. But in that segment that I just read, what is Evola saying, right? Evola, and we have to remember, we're looking at this from a traditionalist perspective, contra Nietzsche. So, what Evola is saying is, okay, you know, it's cool that the Superman, you know, really not the Superman, because the Superman is more so, an idea, but the man, the higher man, right? The man that's climbing the peaks within the chain of thought, going along the zip line between humanity and, the Ubermensch. The thing with that man is, all that he has are these actions that are based around a will to power, a will to expanding himself, expanding his nature, and going beyond good and evil, right? That's the only realization that he's really had towards how to self-actualize as a person, how to release these energies that have been repressed inside of him, right? And this realization is true, and this realization has value to it. But the main problem, and that a problem that he touched upon while I was reading it to you guys, is the problem of the possessed. Just because you're free doesn't necessarily mean that you're not receptive. You're still receptive, even in your freedom, even in your unshackling. So you don't know what ends you're serving, and because you've broken these fake more so societal mores that you've always thought to be true, you're more so open to be receptive towards anything in order to achieving your will to power, even those things that, even though they expand your will to power in some aspects, damage you in other aspects, damage your character. So for Nietzsche, in order to combat this, you need an anchoring. And that is what the initiatory practice in the past was for. It was to provide a means of internal alchemy in order to allow for you to become something different than the normal man, right? If you're familiar with, Taoist internal alchemy, something like that. Within the West, with Thelema, it's, uncovering your holy guardian angel, uncovering your true will. But it's operating within reality besides purely a reality that is man, besides a reality that is purely, man as nature. And that's one thing that you have to understand is, okay, you have the naturalistic tendency within the chain of thought where, all that is good is that which expands your power. But, a lot of times, nature is seen as the model for this. But that's not really helpful because, nature can go in a myriad of different ways. Nature does a whole lot of different things that, our human consciousness says, hey, we don't want to do those things, but nature does those things. And not only does nature do those things, but nature does those things, and it's rewarded for doing those things, even though us as humans have dictated that that's not the necessary path that we're going to be going down. And again, like in the later chapters on magic within the same book, currents like that are discussed. even like in the preceding chapters, just because you're getting something out of a current doesn't necessarily mean that the current is good for you, because you don't know what the ends of it are. Even though you might be able to see the short-term ends of a particular action, you don't know what those long-term ends are. And in a certain respect, you are fulfilling a will to power because you're progressing and you're expanding on that path. But how that path is changing you, how that path is mutating you and adapting you, that's what you have to put into question. And that's why, with Evola, he says that the traditional institution, the initiatory path, is necessary because it allows for you to, once you've opened up those energy reserves and once you've molded your mind into being, free like that, once you've attained a freedom like that, you're more so are able to train yourself in not going down the quote unquote, dark path, not really trying to be like a Sith or whatever. Because the main thing with a Sith is, sure, you gain a whole lot of power as a Sith, but I've never seen a Sith that's good looking. I've never seen a Sith that gains all this power without a price. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've always, like, when we're looking at the movies, we always see that, with their power, there's always something, there's always some drawback. And that's not saying that, the light side is good as well, because the light side, when we look at, the light side of the Force, that's majority, if we were really going to just be honest, that's herd mentality with the light side, just peace, but peace for what? You know what I'm saying? So going back on topic with the initiatory path though. Okay, the initiatory path draws you away from the Sith, and we talked about Taoist inner alchemy, we talked about the true will, and we talked about the higher guardian angel. And we've spoken about these processes more so leading to becoming something different ontologically than the normal everyday human. But within the real world, what does that say about us functioning within the real world? What does that say about what it means for the everyday? What does it say about what it means for, waking up in the morning? Well, think about it like this. We already live in the Ubermenchian society. We live within a society to where it's all about being a better person than you were yesterday. Now, since we live in a postmodern world, not only are we told you have to be better than the person that you were yesterday, but there's no real guidelines for what that is anymore. A lot of paths are, a lot of institutions, paths, and things that might have worked for previous generations don't really work for us now. So we have to discover paths for ourselves. And through discovering these paths for ourselves, while some people may be lucky, while some people may have proper introspection and self-knowledge not to go down a path that tends towards self-destruction, not all of us do. So that's what Evola is saying. It would be a lot better for us now if we could wake up and be able to say, okay, maybe it's not about waking up and being better than I am now. Maybe it's about waking up and, transforming and transcending who I am, going beyond the conditions themselves. I talked about with what I did with my pull-up tower, like getting rings. It would be easy to just go along the will to power route with my normal calisthenics routine or whatever, but I decided to break away and try something with rings. And now, me trying this thing with rings, I know that the morality behind it, and I know that the lesson behind it is, you know, to become stronger. But it's not just gaining, it's not just about rep ranges or, you know, higher weight or whatever the frick, right? Or like lower rest times. It's not within the progression, it's in the morality, it's in the statement of becoming stronger. There's a statement and there's an idea behind my routine. Same thing with the initiatory path. While you have these symbols and you don't know what they necessarily mean, there's an essence behind the symbol. There's an essence behind the alchemical procedure that you're placing on yourself. And these lessons and these benchmarks that are inside of like esoteric thought are there for a reason, and they're there to put those energy, I guess you can say, those energy spurts that you may get, put them towards a direction that will be beneficial for you. Because I mean, think about it. You know, I mean, a lot of us work out, but I mean, we could use that energy for anything. And within a will to power, within a universe that's purely dictated by will to power, you can put it towards anything. And as long as you see that you're progressing, or that you're further along the path than you were yesterday, that is good. You know, that is you know, that you know, confirms that you're going along the right track, even if you're not going along the right track. You know, like with working out, I mean, there's a whole lot of energies that are involved with working out. You know, you have and it's not necessarily energies, it's more so just things within the body. You got testosterone, you got serotonin. But along with testosterone and serotonin, you have things like anger and depression, and all of those things exist along the same spectrum. But do you want to alter the serotonin in your body, the testosterone in your body, by working out? Or would you rather alter your, you know, just release your testosterone and like release your anger by randomly punching somebody on the street, or, you know, like succumb to, you know, the problematic serotonin issues that you may have by just lying in your bed all day? These are things that one would consider as the everyday Evolian take on, you know, essentially life. You have to apply a principle, and you have to apply statements to everything that you do, you know. And of course, like a book for that would be like a handbook for right-wing youth. That would be like a book for that. But, you know, just to put it simply, the Evolian critique of Nietzsche is that life cannot strictly be about will to power. Will to power has to transcend the person, and it not only has to allow for the person to transcend themselves, but it also has to allow for the person to go down a path that they believe to be true and morally right. And when we're speaking about morals, we're speaking about natural morals that are just congruent with the person, right? Just congruent with their character. So Anyways, I don't know why I wanted to make this video, but I wanted to do it for y'all. So, it's your boy, Jalen. Peace.